Hello everyone, my name is Sue Reynolds. I'm with the American Student Achievement Institute, and it is our pleasure to present Redesigning School Counseling webinar series. This is our first webinar, and the focus of this webinar is to help schools establish their advisory council. Okay, a little bit about our organization. We were founded as a nonprofit in 1996. We were founded by school counselors. We're located in Bloomington, Indiana. Our mission is to raise student achievement and close achievement gaps. And we do lots of different projects, one of which is redesigning school counseling. The ultimate goal of our work is to help communities and schools increase the percentage of students who enter post-secondary, four-year college, two-year college, proprietary school, military apprenticeship programs, who enter post-secondary and succeed in post-secondary ed. Our expertise is in systemic change, so we help organizations create vision-based and data-driven processes to raise student achievement. And we tend to do that in statewide movements. Okay. Let me see. There we go. Make that slide a little larger. So my background, for those of you that I've not met, I was a public school teacher and school counselor, worked at the Indiana Department of Education as the school counselor consultant for a while. I've also worked very heavily with some professional associations. I was executive director of the Indiana School Counselor Association, also worked as secondary VP of ASCA. Founded this nonprofit, and was also been blessed to receive a couple of awards along the way, both the Indiana High School Counselor of the Year and the National High School Counselor of the Year. So, so my background is in school counseling. So as we talk, I just want you to know that, so that you realize that, you know, I've been there. I know how busy you are. I know the kind of challenges that you have. Yeah, so I really view myself as just being a school counselor. Okay. Trying to think, one of our participants has a question that they've typed in, and I'm trying to get to it. Let's see, but I can't reach it for some reason. Let me, Rashonda, if I can't open up that question for some reason, if you want to unmute yourself and just ask it verbally, that would be great. So, okay, I'm going to go, yeah, Rashonda?
Yes, how you doing, So this is today, and my question is that come June, with our new incoming sixth graders, could we only survey those kids, because our sixth and seventh graders last year have moved on? So would it be okay to just do that sixth grade group, new incoming students?
Yeah, we want to each spring. So last spring you would have surveyed the students that were in your building at that time, and we know that the oldest class, you know, this year will no longer be at your school. But if it's your eighth graders that left, well, now you have a new set of eighth graders. So we're assuming that from year to year, the group as a whole is not going to change drastically. So that any needs that one group of eighth graders had is probably going to be very similar to the needs of the incoming eighth graders. In a smaller school, that's not sometimes the case. If the eighth grade class only has 26 students in it, sometimes from year to year the classes can be very different. But yeah, so you always just want to survey the students that are in your building at the time when the survey is open in the spring. Okay, did that answer your question?
No, it did.
Okay, great. Okay, so so here's today's agenda. One of the things we want to do, since we haven't talked with you all since last spring, is we want to review terminology, and then the RSC beliefs and process. I'm going to do that very quickly. And then we'll look at this month's tasks. So we're going to look at how do we put together an advisory council that will be wildly successful. And then what submissions are due this month. We'll show you the resources that you have in the manual that will help you with this month's activities, and then also look at the online system. Okay, so this is review. First of all, let's look at the terminology. So 2 words that we want to make sure that everybody is familiar with are guidance and counseling. Guidance refers to the activities that enable students to master the guidance standards, and as a result of having that knowledge and those skills, they make sound choices in areas that impact high achievement. So guidance activities are like teaching activities. We're helping kids gain skills and knowledge. There are some parts of the country that don't like to use the word guidance. But in our work, we use it because we think it's a good term that a lot of people understand, but we define it as just that. When we're in the process of guiding students, we're teaching them, we're giving them knowledge and skills that would help them make good decisions. Then the other part of what school counselors do is counseling. And those activities are activities that help some students address social and or personal problems or issues that are interfering with learning. So, so not all students need counseling. Statistically, if your school is a typical school, probably 1 in 5 students will have some type of social or personal issue that's interfering with learning. So counseling is appropriate for some students. Guidance, though, is appropriate for all students. All students need to learn information in the areas of career development, social, personal, and academic development. Okay, so those are the 2 of the activities that counselors do. The other 2 are advocacy. Counselors do activities that promote systemic change to develop an environment that supports learning for all students. And really the key word is all. So counselors will stand up for low-income students or students who for some reason are being overlooked or not challenged, or you know, that group of kids needs an advocate. And then the other part of advocacy is promoting the needs of an individual student. So when a school counselor is at an annual case conference, being an advocate for the student, that would be also an advocacy activity. So advocacy might be changing the environment, changing a procedure or a policy, but it also might be just promoting the needs of an individual student. And then the 4th type of activity that counselors do is management. Those activities are usually happening behind the scenes, and they enable the school counseling program to run smoothly and efficiently. So for example, in the morning, if you're filling out student passes so that students can come in and meet with you, that would be a management activity. If you're designing a guidance lesson, that would be management. Professional development is management. So it's all behind the scenes activities that you're doing to make the school counseling program run. So these are typical management activities, just to kind of further define this: program development, personal development, networking, and then evaluation. So what we're doing right now is part of the management activities. So then the other thing that we want to define is something that has nothing to do with the school counseling program, and we call these things non-program activities. So a non-program activity that a counselor might be doing is an activity that does not help the students master the guidance standards or address a personal or social problem that is interfering with learning. So non-program activities are not part of the program, but we want to clearly define them so that when we talk about them, everybody knows what we mean. So here are some common non-program activities that are assigned to school counselors: record keeping, administration of different programs, master scheduling, putting on the school's award programs, graduation, discipline. I used to have to do book rental. So, these are all good activities. Somebody in the school has to do them, but they're not part of the school counseling program. So when school counselors are doing these things, they are not engaged in school counseling. Okay, a couple other little things, just our beliefs. We believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So that is really, for us, it's the purpose of school counseling, to help kids make good choices. This is just another way of saying that. We think that when schools implement sound guidance and counseling programs, that helps kids make good choices, and as a result of that, then achievement goes up. When we were designing the school counseling program this year, we're just going to work that backwards. We're going to start with the school's achievement goals. Then we're going to say, okay, what choices do kids need to make in order to reach that achievement goal? For example, if the achievement goal in a high school was to increase the percentage of kids who succeed in an AP class, well, one of the first choices that kids need to make is to enroll in AP. So it might be then that we're designing the guidance and counseling program to encourage kids to enroll in AP, so that then the AP completion rate, successful completion rate, can go up. So this is the pyramid, and again, when we're talking about the program, the impact is the program gets impacted, those kids make good choices, achievement goes up, but on the design side, we work that backwards. We start out with where we want to be at the end. We want to have high achievement in the goals that are in our school improvement plan. Okay, so what choices do kids have to make in order for us to get that achievement? And then what do we need to do in the school counseling program to help kids make those choices? Okay, so that's what we'll be doing this year, is kind of figuring that all out. Okay, I'm going to stop again. Let me see if I can get these questions to open. I don't know why that is not opening, but let me see if, yeah, is this for Shonda or another question?
I do. Will we get a hard copy of the manual, or do we need to just print the sections from the online
Yeah,
setup?
good question, and we'll look at the online system in a minute. There is no hard copy to save paper and also expense for the Department of Ed. So you'll need to download and print, and each month we'll go through how that works. Okay, great, good question. Okay, so the design process, we've kind of talked about that, and again, I'm just reviewing, is right now we're in the step called getting ready. So in getting ready, we put together your steering team, we collected data, you did that last spring when you surveyed, you conducted some self-studies over the summer, and today we're going to talk about putting the advisory council together. So we'll talk about who to put on the advisory council, how to invite them, what the responsibilities are. We're going to talk everything advisory council today. Then next month we'll start the meetings with your advisory council. So the first meeting is just to do an introduction. It's actually a lot like what we're doing right now, to define the terminology, to talk about the process. We'll do a little bit about why, with your council, about why academic achievement is so important. And then the next month we'll say, okay, what's our dream for our program and our school? And we'll talk as a community, as a council, about, why are we even doing this? What's our dream for kids? And that's a really important step, because we want that to be the focal point of all of the work that you do. Then we'll say, okay, if that's our dream, then what are all the choices that kids have to make? So if we're in a middle school with grades 6 through 8, we would be saying, okay, what choices do 6th graders have to make in order for this dream that we have for kids to come true? What choices do 7th graders need to make? What choices do 8th graders need to make? And so in November, we'll define what all those choices are. And I tell you, there's a lot. For a student to be successful at school, there's like 70 or 80 things that they have to make sure that they do well. Things like turning in homework and asking questions when they're confused, taking the most rigorous courses, not punching someone when they're mad. There's a lot of things that kids have to do well to get through school successfully. So we'll define with your counsel what all those things are. Then we're going to say, okay, it would be great if the counselors had enough time to address every single one of those things. But you know what? We don't. And so in December, in the first part of this meeting in December, we'll say, okay, here's the reality. Our counselors only spend, 50% of their time with kids and parents, or 10% of our kid time, and they have 600 kids and there's just one of them. There's no way we can help kids make all of those choices. But if we could figure out a way to get more time, more resources, then we could help kids make more choices. So the first part of this meeting is helping, is just brainstorming. How can we get the counselors more resources, especially time? At this meeting, everyone will understand how busy the counselors are, and they will understand what expertise the counselors bring to the table. And it's just a no-brainer. Why are we having counselors being, serving as junior secretaries, doing paperwork, when they have all this expertise that they could be using to help kids be successful at school? So everybody kind of jumps in and figures out ways to get more time for the counselors. Then, once we've expanded time, then we can go back to all of those goals and we can say, okay, now we've expanded our time. There's 70 things on that list. We still can't do 70. Let's look at the few that we can do, and which will those be? We call those priority goals, and as we develop the program, the activities that you develop will really focus on the priority goals, not on all 70 or 80 things, but on maybe 2 or 3, maybe even one thing that we want to help every student in the building do. Once we're successful at that, then the next year maybe we'll do 2 others, and the next year after that we'll do 2 more things. So we're trying not to spread ourselves way too thin. We're trying to focus on just a few things and then doing them really well so that it impacts every student in the building. Okay, so once we know what we're trying to impact, then in February we'll start to look at root causes. So the question will be, why aren't kids making that choice? Why aren't they enrolling in AP classes? Why are they hitting somebody when they're mad? Why don't they ask for extra help when they're confused? The things that we know that they need to do, will start to explain why they're not doing those things. This is the survey that you gave in the spring is going to have a lot of clues in that. You may discover that kids don't know what AP is, or they've never heard of assertiveness versus aggression, or they are in an environment that is not like their culture at home and they're afraid to ask questions in class. So we'll look at lots of different reasons for why kids don't make the choices that we need them to make to be successful. Okay, so those are the root causes. Once we figure out then what the whys are, then in March we'll start to design the activities. So if kids don't know what AP classes are, then we're going to do a campaign, design activities around a campaign to make sure everybody knows what AP is. If kids don't know how to be assertive, or even if that assertiveness, is maybe an option to being aggressive, maybe we're doing classroom guidance activities to teach assertiveness versus aggression or passivity. So we're designing the activities around the priority goals in March. And that is the last meeting with your council. So there are 5 meetings with your council altogether. And then finally, at the end of the year, then we'll start getting those activities ready. So you'll write guidance lessons, you'll come up with an annual program calendar, you'll have some individual calendars, and we'll come up with a budget so that if you need funding to support some of those activities, we make sure that we have a plan in place so that will happen. So, okay. So that's the process. I'm going to just stop for a minute, see if anyone has questions. If you do, just unmute yourself. And okay, I think we're good. Okay, so now let's talk about this month's tasks. Okay, so what we're doing this month is putting together just the best advisory council that will give you sound input that will give you input from a lot of different perspectives. I can tell you from my own experience, before I had an advisory council, every single decision for our program was based on the perceptions of a white middle-class female. And when we developed the advisory council and brought in adults and kids and teachers that could represent a whole lot of different perspectives, community members, it just made our program so much richer. I learned so much about things that I was doing that maybe didn't open doors for kids. It was just really rich discussions. I loved my advisory council. So let's talk about what it is, what they do, and how to put one together. So the first question is why have one? I kind of mentioned that without one, the program is just based on your perspectives. So we really want to make sure that when you're putting together the advisory council, that the council mirrors the community. So if you have Hispanic students in your school, we want to make sure that the Hispanic community is represented on the council. If you have low-income students in your school, we want to make sure that you've got low-income parents on your council. And maybe community organizations that work with low-income families on your council. Of course, you'll have males and females in your school, so we want to make sure you have both males and females on your council. And the other thing is that we have a lot of schools, this is maybe more true in the rural communities, but we have a lot of schools that are consolidated, and we want to make sure that on your council there is representation from all different geographic parts of your school's catchment area, and not just one community. So we really want to think about, the makeup of your community, and then as you're putting your council together, we want to make sure that your council mirrors the community. That's going to make your discussions really rich. My favorite council member that we had on our council was the parent of one of our high school dropouts. And that parent gave us such insight about ways that our school was failing kids, and it really helped us think about how we needed to provide guidance in a different way so that we could reach all kids and not just the kids that were easy to reach. So, okay. So, another thing to think about as you're putting together your advisory council is what kind of things can your advisory council bring to the table, can the members bring to the table to help your program? Are there people that have the ability to provide you with time, like your principal has the ability to, allocate staffing and students that might be able to free you up for to have some more time? Are there people in the community, maybe your community foundation, that could bring funding to the table later, not right away, not at the first meeting. That may not happen until second or third year. But as they get to know you and see your good work, what we find is that the community is just like, how can we help? Oh, you need money? Well, we'll do a fundraiser. I'll go to my business or whatever. Or in my case, I needed time, and my different teachers stood up and said, I'd be willing to do this during my prep, or whatever. So, who can help allocate? Who can help with resources? Another thing to think about is who has access to kids. It's really cool if your community organizations can parrot or duplicate your words. So if, for example, you've got youth ministers on your advisory council and you're talking to your 8th graders about the importance of signing up for algebra, registering for algebra, but then the kids are going to their faith-based organizations and they're hearing the same thing at church or where they worship, or maybe they're in 4-H or at their boys club or whatever. So we're wanting to think, who has access to kids, and if you can get them on the advisory council, then kids can get the same messages in multiple places. And same thing with parents. I think it's really great to have members on your council from your PTA or your band boosters or your athletic boosters, because those are the parents that can learn what you're doing and then reach out to other parents. We know all of the research has shown that kids turn first to their parents for guidance, which is personally how I think it should be. But if we can get parents good information, that really helps kids make good choices. So you might be thinking, who has access to kids? Is it the boys club, the girls clubs, Girl Scouts, 4-H, whoever, and who has access to parents? Then, another thing that is incredibly important, I can't tell you how important this is to have at least one person on your council who gets global economics. I would suggest that you find a large company in your community or in a nearby community. One school where I did this was very rural, but there was a city in the next county. So we asked a Fortune 500 company in that city if they would sit on our council, even though they were not in our school's catchment area, and they agreed to do that. So if you find a business that you can go to, I would ask could somebody who is responsible for human resources sit on our council? The folks who are responsible for human resources really care about education, and they know where things are going. So when you're talking about career development, they're thinking, what kind of employees do we need 15 years from now? And they can help you get ahead of the game with your kids. So that's really, really important. So somebody from your Chamber of Commerce or from Economic Development or a human resources person from a large company, that would be really good. And then finally, thinking down the road, it would be ideal if your council members had a big aha moment and it occurred to them all of a sudden that they could provide some of the guidance lessons. So it may be, that your econ teachers, if you're in a high school, they say, oh, we could teach about different types of post-secondary ed during the lesson on opportunity costs. So, who can provide guidance lessons? In my school, that was my academic teachers. We integrated all of our guidance lessons into our academic lessons. It was our Chamber of Commerce who helped teach the kids about interviewing. It was a Purdue Extension Homemakers Club who decided that they wanted to help kids understand where to find merit-based scholarships, and that was their big project for years. And so who in the community, who in your school can help provide those guidance lessons? The Boy Scouts have a merit badge on career development. If you could work with them and have them incorporate that into your guidance curriculum, that's just more hands to help. So, summary, who can allocate resources, who has access to kids and parents, who has knowledge of global economics, and who can help you down the road provide guidance lessons. So those are all things to think about as you're putting together your council. So another thing to think about is that your council are not worker bees. So they're not going to have any homework to do between meetings. There's no follow-up for them to do between meetings. The worker bees are you guys, the steering team. So they're not worker bees. What they are thinker bees. It's their job to provide input and feedback. That's what they do. Before you're making a decision, they're helping you think it through. And then after you implement, they're saying, oh, that didn't go so well, or that went really well. They're your partner. They're part of a team. So they're not there to evaluate you. They're there to work with you, to help you come up with the best program. So here's a makeup that we suggest. We suggest 20 to 30 members, which I know a lot of times when people start with us, they hear 20 to 30, how's that going to work? When you think about all the different stakeholder groups, it's pretty easy to come up with 20 or 30 people. So we want to, on your council, have teachers from all different grade levels and all different subjects. There's probably 10 teachers right there. We want to make sure that you have students from all grade levels and all different programs. So you've got some high ability students, you've got general ed students, you've got college prep students, career and tech ed students, all different kinds of students. So you have all those different viewpoints. So also counselors, administrators, key. If you can get your principal, that's great, an assistant principal, because those administrators will be at meetings where you are not there. And if they're knowledgeable about your program, they're going to represent you at those meetings. That's really important. Also, people from feeder schools and people from receiving schools. So if you're in a middle school, you'd have people, representatives on your council from the elementaries and also from the high schools that your kids feed into. From the community, we're looking for parents representing all different grade levels, all different programs, economic development. You see I put that in red because I think that's really important to be forward thinking. People from the business community. Community foundation is great. They can hook you up with all different kinds of resources, and of course they have funding. People from the media that can do some good advocacy for your program and for your services. Youth service organizations like Boy Scouts, 4-H, faith-based organizations, service clubs. We really, in my school, tapped into the service clubs to help us. Service clubs are like Kiwanis, Lions clubs, Rotary. Something like 80% of the service clubs in Indiana have the word youth in their mission statement. So a lot of those service clubs are just looking for projects. And if you can say, you know, this is what we'd like to accomplish, would you guys take that on as a project? They'll step up to the plate big time. So we use the service clubs in our community to help us deliver our guidance curriculum. It was just really cool. Public library, a lot of communities with schools that we serve, the public library will develop a guidance section of the library, and they'll put information in there about post-secondary ed and how to study and careers and all that in the public library. Agencies, one I would really suggest is your local mental health agency. That will bring in another perspective in terms of the social personal counseling that you're doing, and then someone from local government. So we're really trying to make this a rich council so that you can have rich discussions. The schools that really have the most success with RSC are also schools that take the time to put together a really sound council. I think you can imagine with everybody there talking about what do kids need and how do we all work together to get kids those things. It's just really exciting. So, okay. So that's kind of the makeup. One other thing about having 20 to 30, when we do our meetings, when we give you the materials for the meetings, we're going to give you everything you need to run a meeting of that size. So we'll give you PowerPoints, we'll give you scripts. If there's a decision that needs to be made, we'll give you a consensus building tool so that we can get those 20 to 30 people to consensus quickly. So don't sweat it. It's really fairly easy to get 20 to 30 people. It just takes some phone calls, and that's the task for this month. So I mentioned economic development and how important that was. You know, all different kinds of economic development groups. Human resources, if you're bringing in someone from a local business, that's who we would suggest. Community foundations, service clubs, Lions, Rotary, Optimist, Kiwanis. And then one question that we often get, there's a lot of school districts where there's more than one school doing RSC or Indiana Gold Star. And we always get the question, does each school have to have its own council? And the answer is yes, because each school is different. And when we start to look at the data, you know, we want to make sure that the council that goes with school A is looking at school A's data. The council that goes with school B is looking at school B's data. Also, the politics in every school is a little bit different. And as we're starting to redesign the program, you know, we want to make sure that we're being sensitive to the internal politics within the building. And that's a lot easier if we have just one school and one council. There will be some times when the councils can work together. So like if you're doing a presentation, you could bring the councils from two schools together, do one presentation, and then have the councils separate for the discussion. So yeah, so you could save a little bit of time doing it that way, but it's really important that each school has its own council. So you're going to get the question when you start to invite people to be on your council, you know, what are my responsibilities? So their responsibility is to attend 6 monthly advisory council meetings. I think I misspoke earlier and said 5. It's 6 advisory council meetings. Their job is to be a thinker bee, not a worker bee. So they're providing input and feedback. And then down the road, as they get to know you, and we won't even mention this in the beginning, but just naturally as they see how hard you work and how much you care, they'll become your advocates. And when you need something, they're going to be the ones that are going to the school board or the business or the principal on your behalf asking for what you need. It's really kind of cool. And then also we hope that just naturally, we're not going to ask them to do this, but down the road a light bulb will go off and someone will say, you know, I'm in the Kiwanis Club, we could help with that. Or my business has, you know, this, and we could come in and do that. So, so those are some side benefits that we're going to get that typically doesn't happen until like the second year-ish, and only if you've really taken the time to put together a sound advisory council. Okay, pause real quickly about advisory council. See what questions people have. If you have a question, just unmute yourself. Okay, not seeing anything. Okay, so this month, here's what your tasks are. Due at the end of the month. So you'll need to submit your advisory council roster. And the rubric items are that your advisory council includes representatives of students, teachers, parents, business representatives, and community organizations. So as you're putting together your council, for us to okay your council for Gold Star and RAMP, we need to make sure that we have representatives of those 5 groups. And then also in the roster, we want to make sure that you've started to build a database for communication purposes. So online, we'll need you to enter the participants' names, phone numbers, and email addresses. There's also a place for what perspective that advisory council member brings to the table, but we're not going to do that part yet. We're going to wait until the first meeting, and then at the first meeting, we'll ask people to tell us what perspective do you bring to the table. We may know that we brought them there because they represent the Hispanic community, but they may say, I can represent low-income parents, and that's fine. So we'll write down the perspective that they feel that they're bringing to the table. Okay, then there are some narrative questions, and we just need to make sure that that there's a narrative that's present for each question. I'll show you how to put that in. And then finally, we'll start a weekly, the time task log that you've been doing since last spring. We just want to make sure that you're continuing to do that. So in March or later in the year when we're using that data, we have a whole year's worth of data. So I know you started doing that like last March or so, but we just want to make sure that you're continuing with that. And if you haven't done that, we want to make sure that that's happening. So, okay. So let's look at the manual, and then we'll go online. So, and I'm just going to pull up a manual instead of using the slides. Okay, so I'm logged in as Demo School, and when you log in, you, oops, timed out. Hit login again. Okay, so when you logged in, you'll come to the front page that looks like this, and one of the things we want to make sure, this should be right because you did it last spring, but I always like to check at the beginning of each year and make sure that the correct curriculum is checked. So you guys are in the first year, so first year process and then save. Okay, then in the manual, I'll click on manual, and you can see we've been working with data collection, these parts of the manual. Advisory Council recruitment now is the part of the manual that applies to this month. So there's a couple of activity sheets in here that I think would help you. One is a sheet to help you brainstorm your advisory council. And if I open that up, I'll show you what that looks like. So basically that looks like this, and what you do is you do two things. You start out by circling the stakeholder groups that are in your community. So do you have students representing different grade levels? Well, yeah, you have different grade levels. Do you have different ethnic groups? Yes. Do you have free reduced lunch kids? Yes. So you would circle all the stakeholder groups that are within your school's catchment area. So different student groups, parent groups, different educational groups, different community members. So you just go through and circle, what stakeholder groups are in our community. And then after that, then you'll just start to brainstorm, well, who could we invite? Yes, we have students in different grade levels. Well, what sixth grader could we invite? What seventh grader could we invite? Down in the community part, yes, we have, we want to make sure we've got a 4-year, we want to have a business that employs 4-year college graduates. Who could that be? Which company? Which person? And it's perfectly okay to cold call. You don't have to know a person. You could just call up, the engineering firm and say, we'd like to have somebody from your organization serving on our council. Who would you recommend? Do you have service clubs in your community? Yes. Well, who could you call? Do you have an apprenticeship program in your community? Yes. Well, who could I call? So media, same thing. Clergy. So this is just a kind of a brainstorm tool to help you think about who to put on your council. Okay, just wrapping up real quickly. We've also given you phone call talking points. So when you call that advisory council person, here are some things that you could say. Our school's beginning a process to redesign our school counseling program. We want to design our school counseling program to better meet the academic, career, and personal, social development needs of our kids. So just talking points to kind of give you a start on what to say. There is a follow-up letter, so after someone says yes, you could just cut and paste this on and put it into your own, print it on your school's letterhead. You can edit this. If you don't like it, develop your own. But somehow once someone has said yes, we want to have something in paper that goes to them that kind of commits them a little bit more. And then after they've come to your first meeting, there's a follow-up letter here to send them that thanks them for coming. So the first 3 are things that you use this month: the brainstorming tool, what to say when you call the people, and then when they say yes, the introductory letter that tells them when your first meeting is and thanks them for saying yes. Okay, so that's the parts of the manual that apply to today. And then in the process tab, I'll go over there real quickly. In process tab, I'm going to scroll down to August. So the task is build your advisory council. That's the August activity. The webcast that we're recording right now will be linked to this little button. And then when you're entering your advisory council roster, you just click on that, and we're going to add or edit your advisory council members. So I'm going to click that. I've already got some advisory council members in, but when you're adding a new member, you just scroll down to the bottom and just click on add a new member, put in their name, their email, their phone. On perspective, remember, we're going to leave that blank now. We won't know that until after the first meeting. And then just hit save. So it's really, really simple. Okay, and then one other little tool I wanted to point out. Let me go back to this page. On this page, let me show you. Let me go one more so you know how I got there. So on Enter Advisory Council Roster, when you hit Enter, this is where you put them in, but it's also where you print out reports. So this is a report that gives you the whole roster. And this is an email list. So what the computer is doing is it's just going to take all of the email addresses that are for your advisory council members, and it's going to put commas in between them. So if you're sending an email to your advisory council, all you need to do is copy that and then put it in the to box in your email. If you use Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft doesn't like commas. They want semicolons. So just click that, and that changes all the commas to semicolons. So, okay. So you've got that tool, and that's it. So your job this month is to put together your advisory council, and you will be ready then to meet with us next month to do the to prepare for the first meeting. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. I just want to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything. So we did that. We talked about those things, talking points, online system. Yeah, so that's it. Your first, we went through those meetings. One other thing that would be a really good idea right now is let's go back real quickly just so we can look at that. Let's see, view, slide sorter. On the slide, pull it up again, for the 15-16 calendar. Actually, we looked at this before I started recording, so I'm glad we're bringing this up now. But the meetings that you have will, well, let me, you know what? I'm seeing there's some issues with this too. Let me just type this in real quickly. Bear with me 1 minute. I want to make sure that this is correct. So in August, you're putting together your advisory council. So that is not a meeting. Oh, shoot. Bear with me 1 second. I thought we had the slide up to date. So this is advisory council recruitment that you're doing in August. Then in September, you're doing your meeting 1, and that is to do the intro with your council. So that means that our training is on September 1st. Sometime between September 1st and October 6th, you want to schedule your first advisory council meeting. A lot of schools like to schedule all of the meetings up front so that when somebody says yes, you can say, okay, here's the dates of all of our meetings for the year. So the first meeting would be in September to talk about the intro. The second meeting would be in October to talk about vision. The third meeting would be in November to talk about goals. The fourth meeting is in December to talk about priority goals. No meeting, no webinar in January. Then in February, we'll prep for meeting 5, which is root causes. In March, we will prep for meeting 6, the final one, which is to talk about your school counseling activities. Then in April, we are talking about preparation on your part for those activities. And in May, we're just doing kind of a year-end wrap-up. And then in June, we probably won't have a webinar, but I just want to have it in there in case we need one more. All of our webinars are at 2:30, and the registration is up right now for all of them, so I hope you've registered for all of the webinars already. But again, you might want to, before you start recruiting your advisory council members, schedule the dates for all of your meetings. So again, if the training is September 1st, this meeting needs to happen sometime between then and October 6th. If we're talking about vision on October 6th, then meeting 2 needs to happen sometime between that training and the next training, November 3rd. Okay, I think that's everything I wanted to cover today. You should have what you need to go out and really recruit well your advisory council. When we get back together again in September, I'll ask you to share with us, with everyone, how that recruiting went, how large your council is. Are there any council members that you're really excited about? Are there any groups that are underrepresented? we'll just kind of ask you to give us a state of the advisory council comment in September. So remember, this is one of the key parts to doing redesigning school counseling. If you can, when you do this step well, everything else just falls into place. So, okay, let's see if we have any questions, and if not, then we'll sign off. I know I'm a little bit long on this webinar. I try to keep them all right to an hour. So I'm not seeing anybody unmuting their microphones. Okay, well, we're excited to get started with another group of first-year schools in RSC and Indiana Gold Star. And again, we'll post this webinar online, so if you can't remember something, you'll be able to look at it again online. And within the next few weeks, we hope to have a person working with us whose designated responsibility is to serve you. And again, that person will be at the phone waiting for your calls, and then they will be reviewing your work on a monthly basis. So be looking for that, and as soon as we have that person in place and we know who it is, we'll introduce them to you so that you can get acquainted. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and don't forget the good work that you do for kids. You make a difference. Thank you.